I'm a licensed psychologist in California, and I feel very, very fortunate because I got trained in EMDR back in 1992 when I was just starting as a psychologist. So that's been a huge, huge part of my work. It's not an energy therapy, but it's a very powerful mind-body approach where my work continued to be exciting and rewarding, and I got wonderful results, but I always felt that I wanted something in addition to the power of EMDR, which isn't right for everyone, and talk therapy. And I checked out so many different kinds of things that were out there, and I finally found EFT and felt like it filled the missing gap for me.
Having gone to medical school, I learned sort of the nuts and bolts approach to viewing people as complicated machines, but that never quite explained everything to me. So I've always been curious about the different alternative approaches. And energy, for me, was the best way to pull it all together and to explain things, to understand things that the medical model really couldn't nail down for me. So energy psychology is the current form of it, and I like it the best of all the energy approaches because it allows me to sort of keep my space, to instruct them, and to empower the patients rather than to rely on me to give them an energy juicing every week or whatever it might be. So it's the right combination, and it's also not very time consuming, which quite frankly is an issue in the way mental health is structured and built in America these days.
Well, it was kind of by accident, one of these lucky accidents. I had a client who was very ill and had been to dialysis, kidney dialysis, and wasn't quite back in her body. And when she came to see me, she could hardly talk. And I thought, what can I do with her? I was used to doing some forms of talk therapy. And then I remembered from therapeutic touch the smoothing of the energy field. So I did that with the client for several minutes, and it's just like she came back online. So that was a very exciting moment. It was sort of an aha, that this energy work that I'd learned to do in the nursing settings could also have applications for my practice as a psychotherapist. So I've been bringing this kind of work to my clients, awareness of their energy fields, teaching them how to align their energy fields, teaching them how to balance their own systems, and helping them with specific techniques. And then, of course, once we started the association, I've been teaching how to use specific modalities, specific approaches with specific client populations. It's been a very exciting journey.
So I'd been doing a lot of psychotherapy, having a lot of psychotherapy myself, because I was going through some difficult times. And a friend introduced me to EFT, and I started using it with myself, and it was helping a lot. And I started using it with friends, and I had really amazing results. Just amazing transformational changes that I was seeing in people, and I thought, well, this seems more powerful than anything I've seen in any of the kind of psychotherapies or workshops I've been to, different kinds of treatments I've seen. So there's got to be something. I figured there has to be something really powerful happening here, and I wanted to keep using it and learn more about psychology in general, and kind of integrate. I was just interested in energy psychology from that point on, and I'm actually doing my doctoral research is focused on energy psychology.
So I actually did not go through the same kind of skeptical process that a lot of people did, but for me what really made the difference was experiencing it right away and feeling the change in myself. So the first little training I was at, they had these fresh baked chocolate chip cookies for snack, and I really wanted it, and they told me I could tap on it, and I didn't eat the cookies, and that was amazing. So then when I had an opportunity to take a longer training, I was trying to think about, well, should I spend the money and the time? I don't know anybody who does this stuff. And I thought, gee, if I could get that kind of shift when I knew this much, what could happen if I actually knew how to do this stuff? So that was, and I think for almost everybody, it's experiencing it, that it doesn't matter. Because it is weird. I call it weird therapy all the time. It's weird. It's crazy. But It's great.
You know, my training is very classical. I went to Penn undergraduate, you know, very solid Ivy League school. I did my M.D. and Ph.D. combined at the University of Michigan, which was a solid scientific place. My Ph.D. is in molecular biology and biochemistry. And then I went to Columbia, one of the best, you know, psychiatry residency programs in the country, one of the best funded research institutions. Comes from a tradition of both biological psychiatry as well as psychoanalytic, psychodynamic thought. Okay, I loved all of my mentors there. I didn't necessarily believe everything that they were telling me was true, but after practicing for a few years, I felt that there were clearly certain things, particularly PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, certainly dissociative disorders, which is the extreme of trauma, addictions, and psychosomatic conditions that, quite honestly, conventional approaches weren't very impressive, at least in my hands. I also have been trained in addiction psychiatry from Columbia also, and psychodynamic psychiatry from Columbia. So, you know, I had these pristine trainings and yet wasn't able to get super far with a lot of people, particularly trauma and addictions. And then I started using these and literally, including people that I used to treat for a while and then were out of treatment and then for whatever serendipitous reasons came back into treatment. You know, I made more progress with them in a session or two than I had made in the few years that I had previously been treating them. So it just was blowing me away. And, you know, quite honestly, it was pissing me off because I thought to myself, I've spent all this training learning all of these things, and then these weird techniques are going to upstage this. How the hell does this work?
I had been practicing for a little under 20 years when I discovered it, and I think I had been waiting for it for quite some time. And so what I first learned was Gary Craig's EFT, and had a number of synchronistic events where I first learned the process. Gary happened to be in town a couple weeks later, and then a couple weeks after that was the first conference in Toronto. So I got to go to all of them right in a row, and so that was a huge learning curve for me, to be exposed to all of this, and this was in 1999. And yeah, so for me, it was what I had been waiting for, and I often say it transformed my practice, it transformed my life, and it's been transforming my clients' lives ever since. And that to me is very important. As a trauma therapist and I guess a depth psychologist, knowing I have this experience now in all these years of knowing how important it is to find these originating events and to be able to clear out the whole pattern. And if we don't do that, then we're working at a more surface level and we're not nearly as effective. So getting to the core of things and being able to have both methods that help us actually find that core, and then be able to clear that core and all the subsequent related patterns to that really speeds up the process of what we do. It makes it much more effective, it's much more empowering, it's much more freeing, it's much more enlivening for people. It brings more radiance and life into them. And all those things were really dramatically different from my experience prior to learning these methods.
Oh, I've always been an open skeptic, which has really helped me hugely because so much of my career has been spent bridging the worlds between the conventional world and the alternative or unconventional worlds. And so that open skepticism has served me well. The EMDR training that I went through in the 1990s, early 1990s, really opened my paradigm having to do with the psychotherapeutic approach. Shortly after I was trained in EMDR, a client came in holding an early book in the energy psychology field and said, "What do you think of this?" And this was always a way that my leading edge really got to expand, was that clients would bring in questions about methods I wasn't familiar with. And I took a look at the book, and I said, "This looks like nonsense." And a couple of years later, I found myself in my first energy psychology training. And I was originally, my first two teachers in energy psychology were Greg Nicosia and Fred Gallo in the mid-1990s. And I walked out of my first training. I flew across the country to get trained. And again, I had this attitude about, it's probably the latest snake oil, but I know better than to just dismiss things out of hand. So I went, took the training. Really remarkable things happened during that first training that I received. not only with me, but more importantly, I really got to witness shifts in others that I knew really well and that could not have possibly faked or would have wanted to fake those changes.
I was on a trauma list where there was a discussion between Roger Callahan and Gary Craig about a new method. And Gary Craig offered a tape to everybody who wanted to learn this, so I offered that tape, and that was the beginning. Yeah. When I finished my training as a transaction analyst and a trainer in '94, I thought, okay, I know what psychotherapy is. I understand it. I know what it is. And then I saw Gary's tape, and I read those contributions on this list, and I thought, hey, this is strange. Something is going on here which I don't understand. So I ordered the tape, I ordered the whole conference tapes, a whole box, and looked at them and tried to practice on myself first, and then I tried to practice with clients, and then I said, okay, I wanted to learn this seriously, so I went to New Jersey for a training with John Depault, Victoria Britt, and Sheila Bender. And I went again, and when again, I was at Gary's STEPS conference in '98, so I saw Gary yesterday after 14 years. And so I went to train in the United States, so I got used to jet lags and treating them with tapping, of course. And from then on, I started teaching anesthesiology in England at the end of the '90s, and I organized the first European conference in 2001, wrote the first European book about the subject. So I've been, once I started, I couldn't give it up. So after, let's say 5-6 years of tapping, I started to discover, oh, there are still more possibilities, still more options. So I'm developing my logosynthesis system since 2005.